To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Foundation. Derek Sullivan adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror before stepping out of his black Escalade. At 42, he commanded respect wherever he went, broad shoulders filling out his tailored suit, steel gray eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of presence that made boardrooms fall silent when he spoke. As the owner of Sullivan Security Solutions, a private military contracting firm he'd built from nothing after his Marine discharge, Derek had spent 15 years turning his tactical expertise into a multi-million-dollar empire. The suburban driveway of his Westchester home felt foreign after 3 weeks overseas training corporate security teams in Dubai. Palm trees and desert heat seemed like another lifetime compared to the manicured lawns and white picket facades that surrounded him now. This was supposed to be his sanctuary, the life he'd built for Linda and the children. Inside, the house hummed with familiar sounds. Emma's violin practice drifted down from upstairs, while Ryan's video game explosions echoed from the basement. At 19 and 17 respectively, they were everything Derek had hoped for in children. Emma, pre-med at Columbia with his same steel gray eyes and determined chin. Ryan, a senior with a full-ride wrestling scholarship to Penn State, built like Derek but with Linda's easy smile. "Daddy," Emma's voice called as she bounded down the stairs, violin case in hand. "You're back. How was Dubai?" Derek caught her in a bear hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Profitable," he said, setting her down. "How's the pre-med track treating you?" "Brutal, but I'm managing. Mom said you might be home in time for Ryan's championship match tonight. Wouldn't miss it." Derek glanced around the spotless kitchen. Everything exactly as Linda preferred. Granite countertops gleaming, fresh flowers in crystal vases, not a single item out of place. "Where is your mother?" "Phone call with Aunt Kelly. Something about the reunion planning." Emma grabbed her car keys from the hook. "I'm meeting study group partners. See you tonight." Derek nodded, watching her leave. The house fell into afternoon silence, broken only by Ryan's gaming and the distant murmur of Linda's voice from their bedroom. He climbed the stairs quietly, military habits keeping his footsteps soundless on the hardwood. The bedroom door was ajar. Linda sat on their king-sized bed, back to the doorway, phone pressed to her ear. At 38, she'd maintained the same petite frame and honey blonde hair that had caught his attention 20 years ago at a Marine Corps ball. Even from behind, she radiated the elegance that had made her the perfect corporate wife, someone who could charm clients at dinner parties and organize charity galas with equal skill. "I know it's risky, Kelly, but think about it logically," Linda was saying, her voice carrying the tone she used when explaining something to the children. "He's completely devoted to them. He'd never abandon Emma and Ryan, even if he knew the truth." Derek froze in the hallway. Every instinct honed by years of combat reconnaissance screamed danger. "Besides," Linda continued, "by the time they finish graduate school, they'll be independent. He'll have served his purpose. And honestly, after everything he's provided, the house, their education, the trust funds, he owes us this much." The words hit Derek like sniper fire. Clean, precise, devastating. "Tony thinks I'm being paranoid, but you know how men are. If Derek ever found out he isn't their biological father, his pride would destroy everything. Better he never knows. He's a good provider, and that's what matters right now." Derek's hand instinctively moved to his hip, where his sidearm would normally rest. The gesture was automatic, learned through countless hostile situations. But this wasn't Afghanistan or Iraq. This was his bedroom, his wife, his life. 20 years. 20 fucking years of believing Emma's gray eyes came from him. 20 years of pride watching Ryan develop his same protective instincts and tactical thinking. 20 years of building a fortune to secure their futures. Linda laughed. A sound that used to warm his chest now turned his blood to ice. "Tony's been patient. I'll give him that. 19 years of waiting for the right moment. But Derek's contracts are getting more dangerous, and he's not getting younger. If something happened to him overseas." Derek backed away from the door, his movements controlled despite the rage building in his chest. The hallway family photos seemed to mock him now. Graduation pictures, family vacations, Christmas mornings. All built on a foundation of lies. In his study, Derek's hands remained steady as he poured 3 fingers of bourbon. The alcohol burned, but not nearly as much as the truth. Linda and Tony Morales, his former business partner who'd helped him establish Sullivan Security before amicably parting ways 5 years ago to start his own firm. The man who'd been best man at their wedding. The man who'd held Emma as a baby and taught Ryan to throw a football. Derek had always wondered why the partnership dissolved so suddenly. Tony claimed he wanted to focus on domestic contracts, while Derek preferred international work. Clean break, they'd said. No hard feelings. They'd even maintained social contact. Barbecues, holiday parties, the kids calling him Uncle Tony. The deception was masterful. Surgical. And it had lasted 19 years. Derek opened his laptop and began typing. Sullivan Security had contracts with private investigators across 6 continents. Within hours, he'd have comprehensive background checks on everyone involved. Bank records, communication logs, DNA analysis if necessary. The same thorough intelligence gathering that had kept his teams alive in hostile territories would now serve a different purpose. By evening, Derek had his game face on. At Ryan's wrestling match, he cheered with the same enthusiasm he'd shown for years. He hugged Linda when Ryan pinned his opponent for the championship. He took photos with Emma and Ryan afterward, holding the trophy between them. "I'm so proud of you both," he told them, meaning every word. Because despite everything, he was proud. Emma's determination, Ryan's athleticism, their kindness and integrity, those qualities were real, regardless of biology. But Linda and Tony? They'd made a choice 19 years ago. They'd chosen deception, manipulation, and greed over honesty. They'd turned his love for Emma and Ryan into a weapon against him. Derek Sullivan had built an empire by understanding that in any conflict, information was power and patience was victory. He'd survived 3 combat tours by never underestimating his enemies and never leaving threats neutralized. As he watched Linda smile and play the devoted wife, Derek began planning their destruction. This wouldn't be quick. It wouldn't be merciful. And it sure as hell wouldn't be forgiveness. The foundation of his life was built on lies. But Derek's revenge would be constructed on truth, precision, and the kind of ruthless efficiency that had made him legendary in places where mercy was a luxury no one could afford. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Deception. Derek's investigation took shape with military precision over the following week. While maintaining his routine, morning workouts, business calls, family dinners, he systematically dismantled 20 years of his life to examine what lay underneath. The first revelation came through financial records. Tony Morales had been making monthly payments into a private account Linda had hidden from their joint finances. Not large amounts, $2,000 here, $3,500 there, but consistent for 19 years. Child support disguised as consulting fees for a shell company that existed only on paper. The second came through DNA analysis. Derek had saved hair from Emma and Ryan's childhood haircuts in their baby books. Linda's idea, ironically, for sentimental value. The comparison with his own sample confirmed what he already knew. No biological connection. Not even close. The third revelation was the most damning. Through his contacts in digital forensics, Derek obtained copies of old phone records and email accounts. Linda and Tony's affair hadn't ended after the children's births. It had continued, carefully orchestrated around Derek's deployment schedule. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, weekend trips disguised as girls' getaways with Kelly. But the most devastating discovery came from Tony's own security firm's files. Derek's connections in the private military world ran deep, and Tony's former employees were surprisingly willing to share information about their old boss. Especially when they learned Derek was interested. Tony had been systematically poaching Derek's contracts for years, using information Linda provided about Sullivan Security's bids and strategies. The amicable split hadn't been about different business philosophies. It had been Tony positioning himself to steal Derek's clients while still having access to inside information through Linda. 6 major contracts lost in the past 5 years. Each one gone to Morales Security Solutions with bids that undercut Derek's by narrow margins. Combined losses, $12 million in revenue. Derek sat in his study, documents spread across his desk like a battlefield map. Outside, suburbia hummed with its usual rhythms. Lawn mowers, children playing, the ice cream truck making its evening rounds. Inside, Derek planned war. His phone buzzed. Linda's text. Having dinner with Kelly tonight. Discussion about Emma's graduation party. Don't wait up. Derek knew better now. He opened the tracking app he'd installed on her phone, easy enough when you owned a security company, and watched her location ping at the Marriott downtown. The same hotel where she'd met Tony 17 times in the past 6 months. The rage that had been building for a week crystallized into something colder, more focused. Derek had learned long ago that anger was a liability in combat. It clouded judgment, led to mistakes. But fury properly channeled became precision. Emma wandered into the study, textbooks under her arm. Dad, can we talk about medical school applications? I know they're expensive, but money's not an issue, sweetheart. Derek turned from his computer, studying her face. The shape of her nose, Tony's. The way she tilted her head when thinking, Linda's gesture. But her determination, her drive to heal people instead of hurting them, that was all her own. Whatever you need for your future, you'll have it. Thanks, Dad. I know I'm not the son you hoped for. Stop. Derek's voice carried the authority that had commanded Marines in combat. You're everything I could hope for in a daughter. Never doubt that. Emma smiled, the same radiant expression that had lit up his homecomings for 19 years. I love you, Dad. I love you too. And he meant it. Biology be damned. Emma was his daughter in every way that mattered. Ryan was his son. They'd been manipulated just as much as he had. After Emma left, Derek returned to his planning. Linda and Tony thought they were playing a long game, but they'd made critical errors. They'd assumed Derek's love for the children would keep him trapped indefinitely. They'd underestimated his capacity for strategic thinking. Most importantly, they'd forgotten what he did for a living. Derek specialized in warfare. Not just the shooting and explosions, though he was expert at both, but the psychological operations, the intelligence gathering, the systematic dismantling of enemy capabilities. He'd spent 15 years learning how to destroy people who threatened what he protected. His phone rang. Ryan's name on the caller ID. Dad, Coach wants to know if you can make it to the state tournament next weekend. I know you've got that thing in Germany. I'll be there. Derek canceled the Germany contract with a single email. Sullivan Security was large enough now to absorb the loss, and this was more important. Wouldn't miss watching you win state. Awesome. Mom said she might not make it. Some family thing with Aunt Kelly. But having you there is what matters. Another lie. Another manipulation. Linda would be with Tony, probably celebrating what they thought was their perfect deception. But Derek would be there, watching his son compete, storing up memories before everything changed. After the call, Derek opened a secure laptop and began typing. Orders to his most trusted operatives, former Marines who'd followed him from the Corps into private sector work. Men who understood loyalty and had no tolerance for betrayal. The plan had 3 phases. Phase 1, intelligence gathering. Complete psychological profiles on Linda and Tony. Financial records, communication patterns, personal vulnerabilities. Everything needed to predict their responses. Phase 2, isolation. Systematic removal of their support networks, income sources, and escape routes. No violence, yet. Just the methodical elimination of every advantage they thought they possessed. Phase 3, destruction. When they were alone, desperate, and completely dependent on his mercy, Derek would show them exactly what happened to people who betrayed him. The children would be protected. Their trust funds were secure, held in Derek's name alone. Their education costs were prepaid through private accounts Linda couldn't access. Whatever happened between Derek and their mother, Emma and Ryan would never suffer financially. But Linda and Tony? They'd gambled Derek's love against his capacity for ruthlessness. They'd bet that 20 years of playing house would make him soft. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Derek closed the laptop and headed upstairs. Linda's side of the bed was still cold at midnight when he finally fell asleep. Dreams filled with desert warfare and the sound of enemy positions being eliminated with surgical precision. In the morning, he'd begin showing them what real strategy looked like. Chapter 3, The Discovery. Derek maintained his facade for another week, each day adding layers to his intelligence operation. Linda's patterns became predictable. Tuesday and Thursday yoga classes that were actually hotel meetings with Tony, weekend shopping trips with Kelly that included restaurant charges for 2 at romantic establishments. The most painful discovery came through Emma herself. During a family dinner, she mentioned her upcoming biology presentation on genetic inheritance. It's fascinating how traits pass down, Emma said, twirling pasta around her fork. Like Dad's gray eyes and Ryan's athletic build. Though I was looking through old photos, and it's weird, I can't find any pictures of Dad as a baby with gray eyes. Mom, do you have any? Linda's fork clattered against her plate. Baby's eyes change color, honey. It's very common. Not usually from brown to gray, though. The genetics professor said. Emma, finish your dinner. Derek interrupted smoothly. Your mother's right about eye color changes. But Emma's scientific mind had already noted the inconsistency. Derek saw her glancing between him and Ryan throughout the meal, puzzle pieces forming in her brilliant mind. Soon, she'd start asking more questions. Derek needed to act before his children discovered the truth through their own investigation. The moment came the following Saturday afternoon. Derek had returned early from a client meeting, entering through the garage to find Linda in the kitchen on another call with Kelly. But this time, Derek recognized Tony's voice coming through the speakerphone. Telling you, Linda, he's getting suspicious. Maybe we should consider telling the kids the truth. Absolutely not. Linda's voice was sharp. He doesn't need to know he isn't their real dad until they're done with graduate school. He'll take care of us until then. After that, who cares? Derek stepped into the kitchen doorway, still unnoticed. But what if he finds out? Tony's voice carried worry now. You know what Derek's capable of. I've seen his military records, Linda. He's not some suburban dad, he's a killer. He's also completely devoted to Emma and Ryan. That's our insurance policy. Even if he suspected something, he'd never do anything to hurt them by exposing the truth. I still think we're playing with fire. Derek cleared his throat. Linda spun around, her face cycling through surprise, fear, and forced innocence in seconds. Derek, you're early. I was just talking to Tony about my children. Derek's voice was conversational, almost casual. Please, don't let me interrupt. Tony, are you still there? Silence from the phone. Tony seems to have lost his voice. Derek continued, walking slowly into the kitchen. Interesting conversation you were having. About graduate school and insurance policies. Linda's mask finally slipped. The loving wife expression disappeared, replaced by something calculating and cold. How long were you listening? Long enough. Derek stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough to see the sweat beading on her forehead, far enough to avoid any defensive moves. 19 years, Linda. 19 years of playing daddy to another man's children while you and Tony laughed behind my back. Derek, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been feeding my business intelligence to Tony for years? That every girl's weekend was actually time with your baby daddy? That you turned my love for Emma and Ryan into a weapon to keep me financing your little family unit? Linda's chin lifted, the same defiant gesture Emma used when challenged. Those children love you. You love them. Nothing has to change. Everything has already changed. Derek pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. I've got DNA tests, financial records, hotel receipts, phone logs. I know about the shell company, the fake consulting fees, the stolen contracts. I know Tony's been playing daddy on weekends while I was overseas risking my life to pay for his children's future. The color drained from Linda's face. What are you going to do? Derek's smile would have been familiar to insurgents in Fallujah. Cold, predatory, and completely without mercy. I'm going to pack my things. Then I'm going to vanish from your lives forever. My lawyer will be in touch about extracting me from any legal obligations to children that aren't mine. You can't do that to Emma and Ryan. I'm not doing anything to them. You did this to them 19 years ago when you decided to build their lives on a foundation of lies. Derek headed toward the stairs. Oh, and Linda? You might want to call Tony. Tell him his insurance policy just expired. Derek climbed the stairs with the same measured pace he'd used approaching enemy positions. Behind him, Linda's voice rose in panic as she tried calling Tony back. Let her scramble. Let her panic. Let her realize that her perfect manipulation had just collapsed. In their bedroom, Derek pulled 2 duffel bags from the closet. Military issue, designed for rapid deployment. He packed with the efficiency of someone who'd moved through hostile territory, carrying everything he needed to survive. Clothes, documents, laptop, the few personal items that actually mattered to him. Everything else, the expensive watch Linda had given him, the family photos, the suburban life accessories, stayed behind. They were props in a performance that had just ended. His phone buzzed. Text from Linda. Please don't leave like this. The children will be devastated. Derek typed back. Tell them the truth. All of it. They deserve that much. Another buzz. Derek, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Derek ignored it. Downstairs, he could hear Linda on the phone with Tony, her voice rising to near hysteria. Good. Let them both panic. Let them realize their 19-year con was over. At the front door, Derek paused. The house was exactly as Linda had designed it. Perfect, pristine, and completely hollow. Like their marriage. Like the family he thought he'd built. His phone rang. Emma's number. Dad? Mom just called me, crying about something. She won't tell me what's wrong, but she said you're leaving? What's going on? Derek closed his eyes, feeling something break inside his chest. Emma, I need you to sit down and listen carefully. There are things about our family that you need to know. Things your mother should have told you years ago. Dad, you're scaring me. I'm sorry, sweetheart. But the people you trust the most just taught me that sometimes being scared is better than living a lie. Derek walked out of the house, leaving behind 20 years of deception and carrying nothing but the truth and his plans for revenge. The war had begun. Chapter 4. The Extraction. Derek's lawyer, Marcus Webb, had handled military divorces for 15 years before Derek recruited him for corporate legal work. He understood operational security, strategic planning, and most importantly, how to wage war through the court system. Jesus Christ, Derek. Marcus spread the DNA tests and financial records across his conference table like evidence at a war crimes tribunal. 19 years? How did you not know? I trusted them. Derek's voice held no emotion, but Marcus had known him long enough to recognize the dangerous calm. Tactical error. Won't happen again. The paternity fraud case is solid. New York recognizes it as grounds for complete dissolution of financial obligations. But Derek, think about this. Emma and Ryan are innocent in all this, which is why their trust funds remain untouched. Derek pulled out a separate folder. I've already transferred their education costs into irrevocable accounts. Medical school for Emma, whatever Ryan wants for his future. They'll never suffer financially for their mother's choices. Marcus studied the documents. This is generous. More than generous. You could legally walk away from all obligations. They're still my kids in every way that matters. I raised them, loved them, believed in them. That doesn't change because Linda lied about biology. Derek's jaw tightened. But Linda and Tony made different choices. They gambled with my life, my money, my emotions. Time to pay the house. What about the business intelligence theft? The stolen contracts? That's not a legal matter. Derek's smile was ice cold. That's operational. Over the next week, Marcus worked with surgical precision. Papers filed in family court, assets frozen, all joint accounts secured. Linda discovered her credit cards had been canceled when she tried to book another hotel room with Tony. Her yoga instructor's salary, the only legitimate income she'd ever maintained, wouldn't cover a luxury lifestyle. Derek had vanished completely. No forwarding address, no contact information, no access to their joint resources. Linda's frantic attempts to reach him went to a legal answering service that directed all communications through Marcus. Meanwhile, Derek established new operations from a corporate apartment in Manhattan. Sterile, functional, temporary. He had no intention of building another life that could be weaponized against him. This was a forward operating base, nothing more. His security company required minimal oversight. Derek had built solid systems and hired competent people. The international contracts continued, the domestic business functioned smoothly, and Derek's reputation remained untarnished. If anything, his sudden single status made him more attractive to certain clients who valued focus over family obligations. Emma called twice the first week. Derek answered both times, his voice warm and loving despite the circumstances. Dad, I don't understand what's happening. Mom says you're angry about something, but she won't tell me what. Can't you just come home and fix this? Emma, your mother has information that belongs to both of us. When she's ready to share it honestly, we can have a real conversation. Is this about divorce? Because if you and Mom are having problems, this is about truth, sweetheart. Sometimes people we love make choices that change everything. I need you to know that whatever happens between your mother and me, it doesn't change how I feel about you and Ryan. But Derek knew the truth would come out soon. Linda couldn't maintain the lies forever, especially with Marcus applying legal pressure and Emma's scientific mind, asking increasingly pointed questions about family genetics. Ryan called on Thursday, his voice tight with teenage confusion. Dad, coach is asking if you're still coming to state championships. Mom says you might be too busy with work, but I know that's not true. What's really going on? I'll be there, son. Front row, just like always. Promise. I promise. Derek meant it. Whatever else happened, he wouldn't abandon the children during this chaos. They'd been manipulated and lied to their entire lives. They deserved at least one parent who kept his word. The state championship was held in Albany, 3 hours north of New York City. Derek drove up Friday afternoon, checking into a hotel near the arena. He'd deliberately chosen a different hotel from the team's accommodations. No need to force an awkward encounter with Linda in the lobby. At the arena Saturday morning, Derek found his usual seat in the front row. Ryan spotted him during warm-ups and gave a small wave, relief evident on his face. Whatever confusion the boy felt about his parents' situation, having Derek there clearly mattered. Linda arrived with Tony. Derek had expected this. Linda's way of showing she'd moved on, that Derek was replaceable. But seeing Tony in the stands, watching his son compete while pretending to be a family friend, triggered something primal in Derek's brain. For 19 years, Tony had played uncle while secretly being the biological father. He'd attended birthday parties, graduation ceremonies, wrestling matches, all while knowing Emma and Ryan were his children, not Derek's. He'd watched Derek pour love, money, and devotion into raising Tony's kids while secretly plotting to steal Derek's business. The psychological manipulation was masterful, and Derek was going to destroy him for it. During Ryan's first match, Derek's phone buzzed with a text from one of his operatives in Colorado, where Tony's security firm was based. Package delivered. Morales Security Solutions office flooded due to pipe failure. Computers, files, equipment damaged. Insurance claim will take months to process. Derek typed back. Phase 2 initiated. Tony had no idea that Derek's influence extended far beyond military contracts. Sullivan Security had relationships with construction companies, utility firms, insurance providers, all the infrastructure that kept businesses running. Disrupting those relationships was a simple matter of making the right phone calls. Ryan won his first 3 matches, advancing to the finals. Between rounds, Derek watched Linda try to play the supportive mother while Tony lurked nearby like a guilty shadow. Neither of them approached Derek directly, but he could feel their nervous energy from across the arena. During the final match, Emma arrived. She'd driven up from Columbia, still wearing scrubs from her hospital volunteer work. She spotted Derek immediately and made her way over, ignoring her mother's frantic gestures from the other side of the arena. Dad, Emma hugged him tightly. I'm so glad you're here. Ryan's been worried you wouldn't show. I keep my promises, sweetheart. Emma studied his face. Mom's been acting strange all week. Crying, making phone calls, meeting with lawyers. And Uncle Tony's been around more than usual. Dad, what's really happening? Derek looked at his daughter, brilliant, compassionate, deserving of truth. Your mother has been keeping secrets, Emma. Important ones. When you're ready to hear them, I'll tell you everything. I'm ready now. After Ryan wins state. This is his moment. Emma nodded, understanding. She'd always been protective of her younger brother, even when they were small children. Will you tell me everything? Even if it's bad. Especially if it's bad. You deserve the truth. Ryan dominated the final match, pinning his opponent in the third period. The arena erupted as he became the state champion in his weight class. Derek stood and cheered, pride overcoming the pain of the last 2 weeks. This was what mattered. Not the lies, not the betrayal, not the revenge he was planning. This moment, watching his son achieve something he'd worked years to accomplish. Ryan ran to the stands after the medal ceremony, championship trophy in his hands. He hugged Derek first, tears streaming down his face. I did it, Dad. I actually did it. You did it, son. I'm so proud of you. Over Ryan's shoulder, Derek met Linda's eyes across the arena. She was crying too, but her tears carried fear alongside pride. She knew her world was collapsing, that the lies couldn't hold much longer. Tony stood beside her, his face pale with understanding. He'd realized Derek's text messages to his operatives weren't random business communications. The pipe failure at his office was just the beginning. Derek held his son close, storing up the memory of this victory. Because soon, everything would change. The truth would come out, the family would shatter, and Derek's revenge would begin in earnest. But this moment belonged to Ryan, and Derek would protect that for as long as possible. Chapter 5. Intelligence and Infiltration. Derek returned to Manhattan Sunday night with a clear operational objective: total information warfare. Linda and Tony had played a long game for 19 years. Now Derek would show them what strategic patience really looked like. His first target was Kelly, Linda's sister and primary co-conspirator. Through his private investigation contacts, Derek learned that Kelly's husband Brad owned a small construction firm that relied heavily on municipal contracts. A few phone calls to Derek's contacts in city planning offices revealed irregularities in Brad's recent bidding processes. Nothing criminal, but enough to trigger regulatory reviews that would tie up his business for months. By Tuesday, Kelly's household income had effectively vanished pending investigation. When she called Linda in tears about their financial crisis, Derek was listening through the surveillance equipment his team had installed in Linda's phone. "I don't understand what's happening," Kelly sobbed. "Brad's never had problems with contracts before. The inspector said someone filed complaints about his work quality, but we can't find out who." "Derek," Linda whispered, "he's starting to move against us." "But why would he go after Brad? Brad never did anything to him." "Because Brad is married to you, and you helped me hide the truth for 19 years. Derek smiled as he listened. Linda was beginning to understand the scope of what she faced. Derek didn't just attack enemies. He dismantled their entire support network, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. Phase 2 accelerated over the following week. Tony's security firm faced a cascade of problems. Permits revoked for administrative errors, insurance policies canceled due to updated risk assessments. Key employees recruited away by competing firms offering substantial salary increases. Derek's network in the private military world was extensive and absolutely loyal. When word spread that Tony Morales had betrayed Derek Sullivan, doors closed across the industry. No one wanted to risk Derek's displeasure by doing business with Tony. Meanwhile, Emma was conducting her own investigation. Her scientific training had kicked in, and she'd started asking pointed questions about family medical history that Linda couldn't answer convincingly. "Mom, I need Dad's family medical records for my genetics class. Specifically, any history of heart disease or diabetes from his grandparents." "Your father never talks about his family, honey. You know how private he is. So I'll ask him directly. Can you give me his new number?" Linda's evasions were becoming increasingly desperate. Derek knew it was only a matter of time before Emma demanded DNA tests or started researching public records. His daughter's intelligence was one of his greatest prides and Linda's greatest vulnerability. Thursday morning brought the breakthrough Derek had been waiting for. Marcus called with news that Linda had retained a divorce attorney, which triggered automatic discovery processes. More importantly, Linda's lawyer had demanded financial records that would reveal the true scope of Derek's assets. "She's panicking," Marcus reported. "Her attorney is talking about alimony, child support, property division." But when I showed him the paternity fraud evidence, his tone changed significantly. "What's he recommending?" "Quiet settlement. No publicity, no court proceedings. Linda keeps the house and a modest support payment in exchange for signing away any claim to your business assets or retirement accounts." Derek laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Counteroffer. She gets nothing. Tony can support his own family." "Derek, even with the fraud evidence, a judge might award some support, especially given the children's involvement." Then we moved to Phase 3. Friday afternoon, Derek received the call he'd been expecting. Emma's number, but her voice was strained and formal. "Dad, can you meet me somewhere private? I need to ask you about something important." They met at a coffee shop near Columbia's campus. Emma looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights spent researching family genetics and comparing photos of Derek and Ryan side by side. "I ran DNA analysis on hair samples from our old family photos," Emma said without preamble. "I know you're not our biological father." Derek had prepared for this moment, but hearing it from Emma still felt like taking shrapnel to the chest. "How long have you known?" 3 days. I kept hoping I'd made a mistake, but the science doesn't lie." Emma's voice broke slightly. "Dad, I need you to know that this doesn't change anything for me. You're my father in every way that matters. You raised me, supported my dreams, taught me to be strong." "Emma, let me finish. I love you. Ryan loves you. Whatever Mom did, whatever lies she told, you're our dad. The man who stayed up all night when I had pneumonia, who taught me to drive, who Who's paying for medical school? That's what matters. Derek reached across the table and took her hand. You're everything I could hope for in a daughter. That will never change. What about Ryan? Does he know? Not yet, but he deserves the truth. Emma nodded. What are you going to do about Mom and Tony? Derek's expression hardened. What do you think I should do? Emma was quiet for a long moment, her scientific mind processing the implications. They lied to all of us for 19 years. They used your love for us as a weapon to manipulate you. They stole from your business and betrayed your trust. She looked up, and Derek saw his own steel-gray determination reflected in her eyes. I think they should face the consequences of their choices, even if it means the family you grew up believing in gets destroyed. Dad, that family was never real. It was built on lies and manipulation. Maybe it's time to build something honest. Derek squeezed her hand. I want you to know that whatever happens, you and Ryan are protected. Your education, your futures, none of that changes. What about forgiveness? Some people might say you should try to work things out. Derek's smile was arctic. Emma, I've seen what happens to people who forgive betrayers. They get betrayed again. Your mother and Tony made their choice 19 years ago. Now they get to live with the consequences. Emma nodded slowly. When do you tell Ryan? This weekend. He deserves to hear it from me, not discover it through gossip or legal proceedings. And then your mother and Tony learn what real strategic planning looks like. As Derek drove back to Manhattan, he felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving Linda: clarity. Emma's support meant everything. She'd looked at the evidence, processed the betrayal, and chosen truth over comfortable lies. Ryan would need more time to understand, but Derek was confident in the young man's character. Both children had integrity that transcended their biological origins. Linda and Tony, however, had revealed their true nature. They were parasites who'd fed on Derek's devotion while secretly plotting against him. They'd mistaken his love for weakness and his trust for stupidity. Derek's phone buzzed with updates from his operatives. Tony's business was hemorrhaging money, his reputation in ruins, his future contracts non-existent. Kelly and Brad were facing bankruptcy due to the regulatory investigation. Linda's support network was collapsing systematically. But Phase 3 would be personal, direct, and absolutely final. Derek had spent 15 years learning how to destroy enemies who threatened what he protected. Linda and Tony had spent 19 years believing they were safe because Derek loved the children. They were about to learn that Derek's love for Emma and Ryan didn't extend to mercy for their betrayers. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. Derek met Ryan at their old fishing spot on Sunday morning, a quiet lake in Westchester where they'd spent countless weekend mornings over the years. The irony wasn't lost on Derek that he was about to destroy their last innocent memory in the place where they'd made so many. Ryan cast his line with practiced ease, the same focused concentration he brought to wrestling. Dad, everyone's asking questions at school. Mom's been crying for 2 weeks. The house feels like a funeral, and Emma won't tell me what's going on. Just give it to me straight. Derek had rehearsed this conversation, but sitting beside his son, watching Ryan's profile that was so clearly Tony's, made the words harder than expected. Ryan, I need you to know that everything I'm about to tell you changes nothing about how I feel about you. You're my son. That will never change. Ryan's hands stilled on his fishing rod. Dad, you're starting to scare me. Derek pulled out copies of the DNA tests. Your mother had an affair 19 years ago with Tony Morales. You and Emma are his biological children, not mine. The words hung between them like artillery smoke. Ryan stared at the papers, his wrestler's composure cracking. That's impossible. Uncle Tony is. Ryan's voice trailed off as understanding dawned. Oh God, all those times he came to my matches. The way he looked at me and Emma. He wasn't being a family friend. He was watching his own kids. Your mother and Tony have been lying to all of us for 19 years. They used my love for you and Emma to keep me paying for their family, while Tony built his business using stolen information from my company. Ryan was quiet for several minutes, processing the betrayal. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a maturity Derek had never heard before. What about the times you were deployed? All those months overseas while Tony was here, playing dad at home. He was here, Ryan. With your mother, with you and Emma. Living the life he helped create while I was in war zones, earning money to support it. Ryan stood abruptly, his fishing rod falling to the ground. I feel sick. My whole life is a lie. Every family dinner, every birthday party, Every time Mom talked about how much she loved you, all of it was fake. Derek rose and put his hand on Ryan's shoulder. Not all of it. Your mother loves you and Emma. That part is real. And Ryan, what you and I have built together, that's real too. Biology doesn't change the man you've become or the bond we share. But they used that bond against you. They turned your love for us into a weapon. Derek nodded. Yes, they did. Ryan turned to face him, and Derek saw his own determination reflected in the young man's eyes. What are you going to do to them? What do you think I should do? Ryan was quiet for a long moment, his wrestler's mind working through the tactical implications. You've already started, haven't you? Tony's business problems, Aunt Kelly's husband losing contracts. That's you. Some of it. Good. Ryan's voice was cold in a way Derek had never heard before. They deserve whatever you do to them. They stole 19 years of your life and turned me and Emma into unknowing accomplices. Ryan. No, Dad. They made their choice. They could have told the truth at any point, but they kept lying because it benefited them. Now they get to face the consequences. Derek studied his son's face, seeing his own tactical thinking emerging. What about forgiveness? Some people might say. Some people never had their entire life revealed as a manipulation. Ryan picked up his fishing rod, his movements sharp with controlled anger. They gambled that you'd never find out. They lost. Time to pay up. Derek felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. Ryan was growing up, forced to confront adult betrayals too early. But his response showed the character Derek had tried to instill: loyalty, integrity, and zero tolerance for deception. I want you to know that whatever happens, your future is secure. College, beyond college, you'll never want for anything. What about Mom and Tony? Derek's smile was predatory. They're about to learn what strategic patience really looks like. That afternoon, Derek activated Phase 3. Marcus filed the paternity fraud lawsuit in New York Family Court, complete with DNA evidence, financial records, and documentation of Tony's business intelligence theft. The filing was a public record, which meant local media would pick up the story within days. Simultaneously, Derek's team executed precision strikes on the remaining pillars of Tony's life. His corporate insurance was canceled due to undisclosed risk factors. His business loan was called in early due to changing financial circumstances. His office lease was terminated for a breach of contract over noise complaints filed by neighboring businesses that happened to have connections to Derek's security firm. Linda discovered her social support network collapsing as friends learned about the 19-year deception. The upscale neighborhood book club, charity boards, and social groups that had defined her identity suddenly became hostile territory. But Derek's masterstroke was personal. Tony's ex-wife, Sarah, lived in Denver with their daughter from his first marriage. A daughter Tony rarely saw or supported because he'd been too busy playing father to Derek's assumed children. Through careful investigation, Derek learned that Sarah had been struggling financially while Tony spent money on luxury hotels with Linda. Derek's operatives presented Sarah with evidence of Tony's financial deception, including documentation that Tony had been hiding income to avoid proper child support payments. Sarah's attorney filed for increased support and back payments totaling $200,000, money Tony no longer had due to his business collapse. By Wednesday, Tony was facing financial ruin, legal exposure, and the loss of everything he'd built by betraying Derek. His careful 19-year plan had imploded in 3 weeks. Linda tried calling Derek repeatedly, her messages becoming increasingly desperate. Derek, please, we need to talk. I know you're angry, but destroying Tony won't solve anything. Derek, the children are suffering. Emma's crying every night. Ryan won't talk to me. Please, for their sake, can we find a way through this? Derek, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but please don't destroy our family completely. Derek listened to each message once, then deleted them. Linda still didn't understand the fundamental truth. There was no our family to destroy. There had only been Derek's devotion to children who weren't his, manipulated by a woman who'd never loved him and a man who'd stolen everything while pretending to be a friend. Thursday brought the news Derek had been expecting. Marcus called with an update from Linda's attorney. She wants to meet. Her lawyer says she's prepared to discuss terms. What terms? She has nothing left to negotiate with. Derek, she's desperate. Tony's business is dead, her support network is gone, and the media is starting to pick up the story. She knows you hold all the cards. Good. Set up the meeting for Saturday. Neutral location. I want you there as witness. What are you planning? Derek's smile would have been familiar to enemy combatants who'd underestimated his tactical capabilities. I'm planning to show Linda and Tony what total surrender looks like. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Marcus's office. Linda and Tony would come begging for mercy, offering whatever they thought might appease Derek's anger. They would discover that Derek's anger had evolved beyond personal emotion. This was now about justice, consequences, and ensuring that betrayers understood the price of their choices. Derek had spent 3 weeks systematically dismantling their lives. Now he would offer them a glimpse of mercy and show them exactly what they would never receive. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. Linda arrived at Marcus's office 15 minutes early, her usual polished appearance replaced by sleepless exhaustion and barely controlled desperation. Tony came separately, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his posture or the fear in his eyes. Derek entered precisely on time, his bearing radiating the cold professionalism that had intimidated insurgents across 3 combat zones. He wore his best suit, the one Linda had bought him for their 15th anniversary, turned into psychological warfare. Linda. Tony. Derek's voice was conversational, as if greeting acquaintances at a social gathering. Thank you for coming. Linda tried to smile, the expression grotesque on her tear-stained face. Derek, I'm glad you agreed to meet. I know we have a lot to work through, but I believe we can find a solution that protects the children. The children are already protected. Derek took his seat across from them, Marcus beside him with files spread like evidence at a war crimes tribunal. Their education funds are secure, their futures guaranteed. This meeting is about you too. Tony leaned forward, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. Derek, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But what you've done to my business, my reputation, don't you think that's enough? We can work something out. Derek's laugh was arctic. Enough? Tony, you spent 19 years stealing my life, my money, and my children while pretending to be my friend. You think 3 weeks of consequences is enough? Derek, please, Linda's voice cracked. I know I made terrible mistakes. I should have told you the truth years ago. But can't we find a way to move forward? For Emma and Ryan's sake. You want to talk about Emma and Ryan? Derek's voice dropped to the dangerous quiet that had preceded violence in hostile territories. Let's discuss how you turned my love for them into a weapon. How you used their achievements to keep me motivated while you fed my business intelligence to your lover. How you made them unknowing accomplices in your 19-year fraud. Marcus opened the first file. The financial evidence is comprehensive. Stolen contracts totaling $12 million in lost revenue. Hidden child support payments disguised as consulting fees. Hotel receipts and travel expenses charged to accounts Derek funded while believing he was supporting his own family. Linda's composure finally cracked completely. Derek, I know you have every right to hate me. But please, don't destroy us completely. I'll sign any agreement you want. I'll disappear from your life forever. Just please, show some mercy. Mercy? Derek's eyes turned to ice. Where was mercy when you let me believe Emma and Ryan were mine for 19 years? Where was mercy when you used my deployments as opportunities to play house with Tony? Where was mercy when you stole intelligence from my company to help Tony steal my contracts? Tony tried a different approach. Derek, think about your reputation. You're a respected businessman. Destroying us completely makes you look vindictive. Surely a man of your stature can afford to be magnanimous in victory. Derek smiled, the same expression that had preceded the elimination of hostile targets. Tony, you've misunderstood something fundamental. This isn't about victory or reputation. This is about justice. You made a choice 19 years ago to build your lives on theft and deception. Now you get to experience the consequences. Marcus opened another file. The lawsuit proceedings will be public record. Paternity fraud, business intelligence theft, conspiracy to defraud. The media attention alone will ensure neither of you works in any professional capacity again. Derek, please. Linda was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. What do you want from us? How can we make this right? Derek leaned back in his chair, studying them with the analytical detachment of a sniper calculating wind speed and target distance. You can't make this right, Linda. You can't give me back 19 years of believing I was raising my own children. You can't return the money you stole or repair the trust you destroyed. There is no making this right. Then what's the point of this meeting? Tony demanded, desperation making him aggressive. If you're determined to destroy us regardless, why are we here? Because I wanted you to understand exactly what you're losing and why. Derek's voice remained conversational. I wanted you to experience the same helplessness I felt when I realized my entire life was built on your lies. Derek stood, straightening his suit jacket. Linda, you'll receive divorce papers within the week. No alimony, no property settlement, no claim to any assets acquired during our marriage. Tony, the criminal complaint will be filed simultaneously. The evidence is overwhelming. Derek, wait. Linda reached toward him, but Derek stepped back. I'm not finished. You're both going to face civil lawsuits from every client who suffered losses due to your intelligence theft. My attorneys estimate the total damages at $30 million. Even if you had assets to cover that, which you don't, the legal fees alone will bankrupt you. Tony's face had gone gray. You can't prove we stole intelligence. I can prove you submitted bids that were exactly 3% lower than mine on 6 major contracts. I can prove you had access to my bid specifications through Linda. I can prove you used that information to steal $12 million in revenue. Derek's smile was predatory. I can prove everything, Tony, because unlike you, I'm actually good at strategy. Linda was sobbing now, the perfect suburban wife facade completely shattered. Derek, I'm begging you. Please, just tell me what it would take for you to stop this. Derek walked to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline where his real life was waiting. There's nothing you can offer me, Linda. You already gave me the only thing of value. You showed me who you really are. What about forgiveness? What about mercy? Derek turned back to face them, and they both recoiled from the expression in his eyes. Forgiveness is for people who make mistakes. You didn't make mistakes, you made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices over 19 years. Mercy is for people who deserve it. You forfeited that right the moment you decided to build your lives on my destruction. Marcus began packing up the files. The proceedings will begin Monday morning. You'll both want excellent legal representation, though I doubt you can afford it given your current financial situations. Derek headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. Emma and Ryan know the truth now. They chose to stand with me rather than defend your lies. Even your own children recognize what you are. Linda's sob echoed through the conference room as Derek left. In the hallway, he could hear Tony trying to comfort her while his own voice shook with fear. Derek walked out of the building into the crisp Manhattan air, feeling something he hadn't experienced in weeks. Complete satisfaction. Not happiness. That would come later, when he'd rebuilt his life on foundations of truth rather than manipulation. But satisfaction in knowing that justice had been served. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Ryan and I want to take you to dinner tonight. Somewhere fancy. Our treat. Derek smiled, the first genuine expression of warmth he'd felt since overhearing Linda's phone call. Looking forward to it. Whatever came next, he would face it with the two people who'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. Linda and Tony would face their consequences alone, exactly as they deserved. Derek's war was ending, and he had won completely. Chapter 8. Aftermath and Isolation. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Derek watched from his Manhattan apartment as news vans lined the street outside Linda's house in Westchester. The paternity fraud case had exploded across social media, turning their private nightmare into public entertainment. Military contractor discovers wife's 19-year deception, read the headline on the morning news. Derek's own image appeared briefly, a professional photo from Sullivan Security's website, but he'd refused all interview requests. Let Linda and Tony face the media circus alone. His phone rang. Emma's voice carried exhaustion despite her attempt at cheerfulness. Dad, it's insane here. Reporters keep calling, trying to get quotes from me and Ryan. I told them to go to hell, but they're persistent. Where are you staying? Ryan and I got a hotel room near campus. We can't deal with the circus at Mom's house. Emma's voice turned harder. She keeps trying to explain herself, making excuses. She actually said she did it for the family's stability. Can you believe that? Derek could believe it. Linda's capacity for self-justification had always been remarkable. How's Ryan handling everything? Better than I expected. He's furious, but in a cold way. Like you. Emma paused. Dad, he said something yesterday that worried me. He said he wants to hurt Tony physically. I'm afraid he might do something stupid. Derek felt a surge of protective concern. Where is he now? Wrestling practice. Coach said it's the only place. Ryan seems calm. I'll talk to him. Emma, I know this is overwhelming, but it will settle down eventually. The media will find other stories to chase. Will it though? The court case is just starting. This could go on for months. Derek had considered this. The legal proceedings would indeed take time, and every filing would renew media interest. Emma and Ryan deserve better than living under constant scrutiny. I have an idea. Sullivan Security has a property in Colorado, a training facility with private accommodations. Very secure, completely isolated. You and Ryan could finish your semesters remotely, away from all this chaos. You mean run away? I mean strategic withdrawal. Sometimes the best tactical move is removing yourself from a hostile environment. Emma was quiet for a moment. What about you? I'll be fine. I've dealt with media attention before during overseas incidents. But you too shouldn't have to live under siege because of your mother's choices. That evening, Derek met Ryan at the wrestling gym after practice. The young man looked older, his usual easy humor replaced by something harder and more focused. Derek recognized the expression. He'd worn it himself during his first combat deployment. Emma's worried you might do something violent to Tony, Derek said without preamble. Ryan finished packing his gear before answering. The thought has crossed my mind. 19 years of him pretending to be Uncle Tony, while knowing he was my biological father. All those times he watched me wrestle, knowing I was his son, but letting you pay for everything. What would violence accomplish? Satisfaction. Ryan's voice was matter-of-fact. But Emma's right to worry. I'm not built for prison, and Tony isn't worth destroying my future over. Derek felt relief mixed with pride. Ryan was thinking tactically, considering consequences rather than acting on impulse. There are better ways to handle enemies. Like what you've done to them. Ryan shouldered his bag. Dad, I've been following the news coverage. Tony's business is completely dead, Mom's facing financial ruin, and both of them are looking at serious jail time. You destroyed them without throwing a single punch. Sometimes the most effective warfare is psychological. Ryan studied Derek's face. Are you satisfied with how it's playing out? Derek considered the question. Linda and Tony were indeed facing complete destruction, financial, social, legal, and psychological. Their lies had been exposed to the world, their reputations permanently ruined, their futures effectively ended. Satisfied? Yes, but not happy. Ryan, I spent 19 years believing I had built something meaningful with your mother. Learning it was all manipulation doesn't make me happy. It makes me grateful to finally know the truth. What happens when the legal stuff is over? Do you think you'll ever forgive them? Derek's answer was immediate and final. No. Forgiveness requires remorse, acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and genuine desire to change. Linda still believes she was protecting the family by lying. Tony still thinks his only mistake was getting caught. Neither of them accepts responsibility for the damage they've caused. Ryan nodded slowly. Emma and I have been talking about that. We don't forgive them either. They didn't just lie to you. They lied to us our entire lives. Made us unknowing accomplices in their fraud. You were children. You bear no responsibility for their choices. Maybe not, but we still feel like idiots for never questioning anything. All those family photos with Uncle Tony, all those times Mom talked about how much she loved you while she was secretly meeting with him. Ryan's voice carried disgust. They made our childhood memories into lies. Derek put his hand on Ryan's shoulder. The memories aren't lies, son. Your achievements, our conversations, the pride I felt watching you grow up, all of that was real. Linda and Tony's deception doesn't erase the authentic relationship we built, but it changes everything going forward. Yes, it does. They walked to Derek's car in comfortable silence. The parking lot was empty except for a single sedan with tinted windows. News media still hoping for an interview. Dad, Ryan's voice was thoughtful. When this is all over, when they're in prison or bankrupt or whatever, will you try to build a new family? Date someone, maybe get married again? Derek considered the question as he started the engine. The idea of trusting someone enough to build another life seemed impossible now. I don't know, Ryan. The idea of being vulnerable to that kind of betrayal again doesn't appeal to me. So they win. They destroy your ability to trust anyone. Or I win by never giving anyone the power to manipulate me again. Ryan was quiet for several minutes as they drove through suburban streets lined with houses that looked exactly like the one Derek had shared with Linda. Perfect facades hiding unknown secrets. That seems lonely, Ryan finally said. Loneliness is temporary. Betrayal is permanent. What about Emma and me? Do you trust us? Derek's answer came without hesitation. Completely. You both had the chance to choose sides when the truth came out. You chose honesty over comfortable lies. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Good. Because whatever happens, wherever you end up, Emma and I want to be part of your life. You're the only parent who ever told us the truth. Derek felt something loosen in his chest, the first genuine warmth he'd experienced since overhearing Linda's phone call. Emma and Ryan's loyalty meant more than any revenge against Linda and Tony. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Tony Morales attempted suicide last night. He's alive but hospitalized. Media's going crazy. Derek showed the message to Ryan, whose expression didn't change. Do you feel sorry for him? Derek asked. Ryan considered the question seriously. No. He made 19 years of choices that led to this moment. Trying to escape the consequences through suicide is just one more act of cowardice. Derek nodded, feeling grimly satisfied with Ryan's response. The young man understood that actions had consequences, that betrayers deserved whatever fate their choices brought them. Tony's attempted suicide would generate more media attention, more public scrutiny of the entire situation. But Derek felt no mercy, no regret for the role his systematic destruction had played in Tony's desperation. Some enemies deserved whatever fate their choices brought them. Tony Morales was learning that lesson far too late. Chapter 9. No Mercy, No Forgiveness. 6 months later, Derek stood in a federal courthouse in Manhattan, watching as Tony Morales was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for wire fraud and conspiracy. The man who had once been his business partner and supposed friend looked 20 years older, broken by the weight of his exposed crimes and public humiliation. Linda sat in the gallery, her own legal troubles still pending. The civil suits had stripped away everything: the house, her car, even her jewelry. She was living in a studio apartment in Queens, working as a receptionist to pay for basic necessities. The woman who had once commanded charity galas and book clubs now faced bankruptcy and social exile. Derek felt no satisfaction watching Tony's sentencing, but no sympathy either. Justice was simply being served. Emma and Ryan flanked Derek in the courthouse, both having insisted on witnessing this final chapter. Emma was thriving in medical school, having transferred to a program in Colorado near Derek's training facility. Ryan had finished high school through online programs and was preparing for his freshman year at the University of Colorado, where Derek's connections had secured him a wrestling scholarship. How do you feel? Emma whispered as Tony was led away in handcuffs. Complete, Derek answered honestly. This chapter is finally closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions about forgiveness, reconciliation, and whether Derek planned to maintain any relationship with Linda now that the legal proceedings were finished. Derek's statement was brief and final. Some betrayals are unforgivable. Some people forfeit their right to mercy through their choices. This case is closed, and I have no further comment. Linda approached him in the courthouse parking lot, looking desperate and aged beyond her years. The elegant woman he'd married had been replaced by someone broken and hollow. Derek, please, can we talk privately? Just for 5 minutes. Derek stopped walking, studying her face with clinical detachment. You have 2 minutes. I know I can never undo what I did. I know you'll never forgive me. But please, for the children's sake, could we find some way to? The children chose sides 6 months ago, Derek interrupted. They chose truth over lies, integrity over manipulation. They're no longer children, Linda. They're adults who recognize what you are. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm still their mother. You're a woman who lied to them their entire lives, who used their love for me as a weapon against me, who turned their childhood into a performance for your benefit. Derek's voice remained conversational, but Linda stepped back as if physically struck. Derek, I'm begging you. I've lost everything. My home, my friends, my reputation. Isn't that enough? Derek's smile was arctic. You haven't lost everything, Linda. You still have Tony. When he gets out of prison in 5 years, you can build the life you always wanted with him. Of course, you'll both be bankrupt, unemployable, and social pariahs, but that's the life your choices earned you. What about mercy? What about forgiveness? Emma and Ryan need to see that people can move past mistakes. They need to see that choices have consequences. That betrayal has a price. that some actions are unforgivable. Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to the dangerous, quiet Linda had learned to fear. You want to talk about what Emma and Ryan need? They need to understand that I will never tolerate betrayal from anyone, including them. They need to see that loyalty is rewarded and treachery is destroyed. Linda was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. You're teaching them to be cold, ruthless, like you. I'm teaching them to be strong, to value truth over comfort, to protect themselves from people like you. Derek turned to walk away, then paused. Linda, you made 19 years of choices that led to this moment. Don't pretend you're a victim now. Emma and Ryan were waiting by Derek's car, having heard the entire conversation. Neither showed any sympathy for their mother's breakdown. She still doesn't get it, Ryan observed. She still thinks she's the victim in all this. Derek started the engine. Some people never accept responsibility for their actions. That's why consequences are necessary. As they drove away from the courthouse, Derek felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The legal proceedings were finished. Linda and Tony faced their destroyed futures alone. Emma and Ryan had chosen to build their lives on foundations of truth rather than comfortable lies. 3 weeks later, Derek received word that Linda had attempted to contact Emma through a mutual friend, begging for reconciliation and claiming she was contemplating suicide due to her isolation and financial ruin. Emma's response was swift and final. She blocked all potential contact points and informed Derek of the manipulation attempt. I feel sorry for the woman she might have been if she'd chosen differently, Emma told Derek over dinner. But I don't forgive the woman she chose to become. Ryan's assessment was even harsher. She had 19 years to tell the truth. She chose lies every single day. Now she gets to live with those choices. Derek studied his children, no longer children, but adults who understood the value of integrity and the price of betrayal. They'd chosen truth over blood loyalty, which told him everything he needed to know about their character. A year later, Derek learned through Marcus that Tony had been killed in federal prison, a violent end to a life built on deception and theft. Linda's reaction to the news was reportedly complete psychological collapse, requiring hospitalization for her own safety. Derek felt no satisfaction in Tony's death, but no sympathy either. The man had chosen his path 19 years ago when he decided to steal Derek's life while pretending to be his friend. Emma and Ryan were informed of Tony's death, but showed no interest in attending any memorial service. Their biological father had forfeited any claim to their grief through his choices. Do you think we should feel something? Emma asked Derek. Sadness or loss or something? You feel what's honest, Derek replied. Tony was a stranger who happened to share DNA with you. The man who raised you, loved you, and invested in your futures is sitting right here. Derek had built a new life in Colorado, expanding Sullivan's security while staying close to Emma and Ryan as they pursued their educations. The isolation was deliberate. He learned the price of vulnerability and had no intention of paying it again. But he wasn't unhappy. Emma's success in medical school filled him with pride. Ryan's development into a confident, principled young man validated every choice Derek had made. They visited regularly, called daily, and included Derek in every major decision. Some people might call Derek's life lonely, but he called it peaceful. No lies, no manipulation, no betrayal. Just truth, loyalty, and the satisfaction of knowing that the people who destroyed his previous life had faced appropriate consequences. Linda lived in obscurity, working minimum-wage jobs and avoiding social contact. The suburban queen had become invisible, which Derek considered perfect justice. Derek had learned that forgiveness was a luxury he couldn't afford, and mercy was a weakness his enemies didn't deserve. Some betrayals were unforgivable. Some people forfeited their right to redemption through their choices. Emma and Ryan understood this lesson, which meant Derek's greatest victory wasn't destroying Linda and Tony. It was raising children who valued truth over comfort and loyalty over blood. The foundation of his new life was built on honesty, strength, and the knowledge that he would never again tolerate betrayal from anyone. Some people believed in second chances and redemption. Derek believed in consequences and justice, and he'd sleep peacefully every night for the rest of his life, knowing he'd chosen correctly. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.